Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to my new live stream. I'm going to just go live on Instagram as well. So if you have questions about Chinese medicine, you are welcome to put them in the comments. And welcome to people on Instagram. If you're just joining us, you are welcome to put your questions. Here's the Instagram. Here's the YouTube. I couldn't work them out in both the same place today. So I haven't done a stream for a while. I forgot how to get the stream started for a second there. That I needed to what programs I needed to put in. But it's just been a busy time for me. As it's never not a busy time, but it's just a different different level of busyness. I've got heaps and heaps of questions to answer from YouTube. So I hope that you can hear me okay and everything's coming through good. Oops, what's happened there? I've got my computer set up in a different place today, so a bit more relaxed on my couch here. Hope that you're doing well, and yeah, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, let me know, and please let me know that the audio's hello cultivative health. Please let me know for YouTube if there's something not right with the audio. I can turn it up if we need to go a bit louder. Might just go a tiny bit louder. See how that goes. All right, so got a couple of different kinds of questions today that people have asked me. One was, what's the difference? Like, is there a difference? I guess was the question. Is there a difference in classical Chinese medicine styles? Like, are they just all the same? And so I'll be answering that. We can talk more about that if people have questions about that. And also a few questions about cooked and raw food. So one of my most sort of popular videos, I guess, is one called Why Eat Mostly Cooked Foods. And I'm actually probably surprised that hasn't been more controversial over the time, because people seem to, if they're raw food lovers, they seem to love kind of defending the raw foods diet. So I totally understand that. And I've had a little bit of a back and forward discussion with a few people about those aspects of it. So I want to kind of talk about that a little bit, some sort of questions around that area. And so if that's something that you've got a question about, or it's something else, it could be 5-element personality types, it could be a dampness, it could be any of these things, you're welcome to ask a question. Maybe something about your treatment. And there's another lot of questions I've got about one of the videos I did about should I feel worse before I get better, and there's been quite a bit of discussion about that. So I'm just going to jump into a couple of these things. So just to quickly answer that question from Instagram, are there different styles of classical Chinese medicine? Yes, there are. It's not just like one, if you know, one size fits all. I would say it tends to be more like consolidated than how spread out and diverse there are as in TCM in general. So in traditional Chinese medicine, there is way more different diversity of styles and different kinds of slants that people take on in their practice, and that you do have that within classical Chinese medicine. And I think the question was, it's on Instagram, and I'm using my Instagram phone to go live on Instagram, so I can't directly look it up right this second. But they asked about lineages, like are they all the lineages the same? And no, they're not, because that's what a lineage is. It's sort of a family thing passed down. But the commonality should be that they're practicing formulas from within the Han Dynasty or earlier than that. Like it's the oldest level of Chinese medicine, formalized Chinese medicine that we kind of have. That's for herbs. Another like kind of wording for that is called Jingfeng. Like those formulas, or those ancient formulas, refers to that. So they might say, "Oh, I'm a Jingfeng practitioner," and then in classical acupuncture, there's also that aspect of like using the methodology and the types of needling, even the sizes of the needles and that kind of stuff that they would have used in the Han Dynasty. So it's worthwhile if you're just seeking out these different sort of things is to go and like have a chat to that practitioner when you first book your consultation with them, or look on their website, or if if you can't get that information, call them up. And especially if you're a person that wants to find a long-term practitioner, um, I wouldn't have a problem if a patient did that to me, and I don't understand if why another practitioner would have a problem with that. If someone just wanted to ask about what's the style of Chinese medicine you practice, so that they can understand, should I become your patient, that kind of thing. So yeah, good. I hope that everyone's doing well. I know this is a weird time to do a stream, but the problem is when I think about doing a stream at the non-weird times, like what inevitably happens is I then can't, because it's the non-weird times for me would be night, like really late at night. I'm just going to check that the audio is working properly, because it's happened before where it wasn't. Oh, now I've got to watch an ad. This is what happens when you have to do your own stuff. You have to be your own producer. Let me check that it's working. This is what happens when you have to do your own. There we go. I am working, so that's fine. That's good. Okay, so we'll just get on with it. So that's the first question out of the way, and then we're going to talk about some questions about uterine fibroids. So I'm just going to read out the question. This was very recently. Hello, Marie, could you please make a video on uterine fibroids, i.e. causes and treatments from a Chinese medicine perspective, as I know the main causes would be dampness generating phlegm and blood stasis. But I would be interested in a more comprehensive or a profound approach on the subject. Also, a collateral question: could the same causes also generate ovarian microcysts? Thanks, from Bucharest, Romania. So good that my videos have found their way all the way to Bucharest, Romania. That's pretty cool. And so this person, I already did a little reply to them saying, yeah, it sounds like you're on the right track, and it sounds like you're studying Chinese medicine to know those things. And that's exactly what all lumps and masses are. So whether they're like cancerous masses or they're not cancerous masses. Now, this discussion, it doesn't mean like you should just use Chinese medicine and not investigate what those lumps and masses are in Western medicine. This is just a theoretical understanding of what they are, so we can kind of work that out. Now, most of the time, if you go to see a practitioner, and obviously YouTube isn't a replacement for a practitioner, then they're going to advise you if you have a lump or a mass and it's not properly diagnosed, they're going to tell you to go and, see your GP, your doctor, and get those tests done, or whatever's needed to be done to work out what it is. So sometimes patients come in and they know what it is at that point. They've had those tests and they kind of know, and it's just like, okay, could I naturally make this thing go down? Or sometimes with uterine fibroids, and those things aren't cancerous masses at all, they're just like masses of tissue. Those types of patients often get them again. Like they might get rid of them through surgery, and then they come back. Now, they might come back very slowly. So that's telling you that they have some kind of pattern of disharmony that's lending itself towards generating these lumps and masses. So from one way of thinking about it, like a classical Chinese medicine way of thinking about it is like, or a fundamental Chinese medicine way of thinking about it is like just that if you don't, like there needs to be more yang than yin in a general sense. Like you need more yang to transform those lumps or masses. Otherwise, things will accumulate. And not just masses, but like any accumulation. Like fat is an accumulation. And so if you exercise more, you generate heat, you generate movement, and there's more yang happening in your day than more sedentary sitting and, yin types of things. And so then you start to lose that fat, lose that accumulation. Now, I'm not saying people who get these masses of fat, that's sometimes people can be very, very thin and have these things happen as well. So, but there is that idea of yang is needed. So sometimes herbal medicines are used to like promote that movement of yang, or that there is yang there to transform it. But it also could be using like blood mass breaking kind of formulas. And that's also how acupuncture works too. Like that's its underpinning philosophy, is getting more blood flow there is promoting more yang to transform the yin. That's the concept. That's the theoretical kind of idea of treating that. And so this person asks, could the same causes generate the ovarian microcysts? And yes, of course. It's sometimes why a person like has a pathology of dampness or blood stasis, let's say. Why do they get ovarian cysts? Why does one person get that? Why does one person get something else? Is sometimes maybe a genetic thing, like they're just how that dampness is kind of expressing because of their genetic predisposition and, you know, things that they're prone to from that way, or because of their environment as well. There's so many different kind of variables, but there are lots of sort of general patterns of disharmony that can lead to lots of different ways it kind of manifests in the body. So thanks, Alice, for that question. That was a good question. Then we've had this little discussion on one of the videos about, is it normal to feel worse before you get better? Thanks, Robin, for some really great discussion on that. And, you know, I think this made me really think about this again. And like, I know other practitioners watch my channel or listen to my stuff, and like sometimes I say things on the channel, and I think, you know, people might think, oh, you're perfect and you're the best practitioner ever about, you know, how you're treating people. And, you know, all practitioners will not build a rapport with some patients because of their personality, right? That's going to happen, even though you try your best, right? They just don't necessarily get along with you, or they perceive something about you that, oh, Marie's not caring because of this aspect about you. Then you also have the aspect that some practitioners just having a bad day. Like, you can have a bad day. Now, I try my very, very best, and I think most practitioners do, like, to be able to put that aside. And you have to practice being able to do that. Like, you have to make a commitment to do that. Like, it's not about me. It's about them, right? Now, sometimes you can just have a bad day come out of nowhere where you didn't know that was going to happen, and it can really throw you and shock you. And then you have to deal with difficult situations that patients have. And, you know, sometimes a patient might walk away thinking, oh, you were a bit snappy at me, or that was a bit abrupt, or I wasn't expecting that. And, you know, everyone has that. And I'm not saying that that's an excuse for that behavior, but it just sometimes can happen. But on the whole, like, and in a general sense, like this question says here, so basically the video was about, is it normal to feel worse before you get better? And one of the things I said in the video was, like, if that does happen, you should tell your practitioner. Like, practitioners can't learn unless someone's telling them what's happened. Like, they can't know. They don't have a crystal ball. Like, if a patient doesn't come back to see me, I don't know why. I have no idea why they didn't come back. They could have come back. They could have not come back because they didn't like me. The treatment didn't work. Maybe the treatment did work. Maybe they just ran out of money. I try my best to, like, make people feel comfortable enough to be able to call me. And I say that when they're new to taking herbs. Like, if you're not sure about something, please call me. Like, I'd rather, you know, and with the acupuncture, if you're not sure about something, please call me. I'd rather have a conversation about it and, know what's happened so that I can help my best to rectify that or solve that or whatever can be done. Anyway, so, you know, I think it's a good idea to go and talk to your practitioner. But this person here, I think they're from the USA. I'm probably just assuming that, but they said, you're assuming that if a patient tells their healthcare practitioner something negative, the person will take it seriously, like the practitioner will take it seriously and learn from it, instead of being angry and blaming the patient. Unfortunately, the latter is far more common. And that really makes me sad when I hear those comments, because I think, I know a lot of practitioners, and that's not the intention that I've ever come across from them. I have had experiences myself with different healthcare practitioners, like that you've seen as a patient, where it hasn't been a good experience. And I teach this in one of my classes, and I ask them all the time, like one of the classes I'm teaching at the moment, I usually, like maybe second week, I ask them that, and we write all the reasons why people wouldn't go back. Like, I ask them, have you ever had a bad experience with a practitioner? And there's lots. And then I say to them, don't be that. Like, don't be that practitioner. Like, you can see how that could easily happen if you had to have a bad day and that was the first time a person has seen you. But we have to strive to be the best that we can be, right? And some of the reasons why people said they had a bad experience, that these are students and stuff that I've taught over the years, have said things like, the practitioner dismissed me because I was interested in natural medicine, and they said, they kind of dismissed that, and they didn't listen. They didn't acknowledge that. They didn't validate that, or like not that they were needing that practitioner to validate the efficacy of the natural medicine, but just the fact that they were using it, they were made to feel not great about that, and their choice, right? So there's four principles of ethics. One of them is autonomy. Autonomy means the ability for the patient to choose, so far as they're in the right mind to do so. And most people fit into that category. Like, they have no matter, even if the practitioner doesn't agree with that is a medical ethical principle that you, as a practitioner, they have to respect your autonomy. Like, they don't give you autonomy, they respect your autonomy. It means you already have autonomy, but they are respecting that, right? So not allowing you to have it, like, as in sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, but you always have that. And I think, like, we all need a reminder of that, and that's one of the reasons why I like teaching, because it reminds me of these things that I should be constantly reminded about. And I don't want people to watch my channel, other practitioners, think, oh, Marie's on a high horse telling everybody how to behave. I'm not. And I think I would rather err on the side that most practitioners are trying to do the right thing. They are genuinely concerned for people's well-being. And that most practitioners will want to do the right stuff. And it breaks my heart to hear that people have had these really bad experiences. So then this person goes on and says, by your higher standards, probably most of the treatment I've received from practitioners has been unethical. Oh, because I said to her after that, this would be very unethical behaviour from the practitioner. And then this person says, by your higher standards, probably most of the treatment I've received from practitioners has been unethical, but maybe that's the standard of care in the US. For example, the dentist who said there was a dentist who said, why should he care about me enough to fill my cavities when I didn't care enough about myself to lose weight? Then there was the MD I went to for my thyroid who loved keto and told me I had no self-control. And when I tried to tell him his diet gave me panic attacks, and so on and so on. Way too many examples to list. I don't put up with the worst abuses, but it makes it a struggle to get on and get any sort of decent healthcare. I'm luckier than most. I understand medical terms and do my own research. And I just said to them, sorry you had to go through all that. Medical system should be better, no matter what country. It's meant to be about caring. Like, it's meant to be about caring for the sick. And that's, a big concern of mine. Like, I feel like this has gotten worse, not better, since COVID times. People are, like, getting less care. And there's one thing to get knowledge, like, oh, I got the results of my blood test. So, like, if we don't have practitioners, we're gonna just get, I get the blood test and I get that knowledge. But what about the care that kind of comes along with that? Cool. I've got another question on the channel. I'll answer that in a sec about pulse diagnosis. Yeah. So that's my rant over. About it's just important to care for people. And look, I understand. I've had people leave my practice because, or like know from people that have perceived that I'm not caring enough. And it's hard with different people's personality types to show that you care in a way that other people also show that you care. Also, that's how they perceive you care. And get on with your busy day. And service, like, you've got some people that are just like, I have patients that sometimes come late and then they expect to have a full amount of time. or they need that for some reason, and then that makes you late, and then there's all these different like variables in the mix of things that happen. And so it's a busy job for practitioners. They often have to deal with a lot, right? And I'm not saying that I don't enjoy that. That's the part of the job I enjoy the most, like the complexity of it. But in all the midst of that, like, I think we have to remember about, people are at their worst. I used to always say this to my staff when I had reception staff, like, when people come here, just expect that they're not at their best. Like, they're at their worst when they come to see me, because they're in pain. They're not happy with how their body looks, maybe. They're not happy with their life. They feel upset or something, or anxiety, or whatever's going on. And so that's not how they might normally be. And so maybe sometimes when you're in pain, you're really snappy. Sometimes when you're in pain, you're like, struggling with some things. All right, so we've got this question here about pulse diagnosis. Hi, Marie. How important is pulse diagnosis? Is it still possible to get the formula wrong, even with pulse diagnosis? So, yeah, this is a really great question, and something that I'm quite passionate about. Just got my coffee in this cup now. So pulse diagnosis is one of the key aspects of Chinese medicine that kind of differentiates it from all the other medicines, right? It's unique to Chinese medicine. So the answer is yes, it's still possible to get the formula wrong even with pulse diagnosis, for sure, right? Because you have to be good at the pulse diagnosis. You have to be and some systems of Chinese medicine don't rely on pulse or teach you how to diagnose through the pulse as good as others. They're not as reliant on it. Now, general Chinese medicine, what's taught in most TCM university degrees, including the degree that I did in my original time, doesn't teach you how to diagnose by the pulse. Here's the exact formula. I only learned that through doing ICEAM, which is a classical Chinese medicine lineage system. So going back to that first question about are all classical Chinese medicine systems the same? No, they're not. So that's a very unique part of the system that I practice. Now, there's about 400 or so, maybe 450 or something practitioners, I think, in the world that have done that system. And that's taught through Arno Versluis. Like, that's a unique aspect of that system. Now, there's other systems that use pulse and match them up to formulas quite a lot more accurately than other systems. So I'm not saying that's the only system that exists that does that. There's lots of other systems that do that as well. So even if you're very, very good at that system, there are some pulse types that don't have an exact formula, right? And also, we don't just feel the pulse and go, oh, here's your formula. Like, I couldn't just have a random hand come through a box and feel the pulse and then go, oh, this is the formula for you. Like, that would be quite unusual and weird. Like a claw hand kind of comes through the box and, something like that. You have to ask the patient some questions, because those pulse feelings could mean various things. And so then you ask the patient, what symptoms do they have? And then you're going by that, right? Now, in TCM, there are some practitioners that don't feel the pulse very much, or they might feel it, but they might not really use it to rely on it. Because one is they might not feel that might not feel confident in it. Their system of Chinese medicine might rely more on tongue diagnosis, or go by more symptoms. And certainly, like, you can give out formulas fairly accurately, I'd say, without the pulse for some kinds of conditions. And I've only discovered this really more in the last 2 years with the COVID time. Now, where I live in Perth, we didn't really have a lot of times where we had to shut down. But we certainly had times where patients were a bit afraid to come in. And so they would prefer to just call you up and get this thing. Now, if they had COVID, so now in Perth we've got COVID going around this whole year, obviously people can't, I can't have those people come to the clinic, unfortunately, and get a pulse diagnosis to feel it. So that's kind of a bit of a gap, I think, in our medicine. unfortunately. Like, it's going to be a learning gap because we won't be able to go, oh, here's all the COVID pulses. However, the symptoms, we just go by the symptoms. And I've had lots of patients use those herbs. Like, this, it seems to be the same utility of like a cold or a flu formula because you're going by those symptoms. I don't think COVID-19 would give people a specific pulse that, you know, oh, here's a different formula. Like, that's not how Chinese medicine ever has worked. So we're still using these Han Dynasty formulas for lots of treatments of things that have come, or diagnoses that have come about in modern times. So on some things, now, if I had a patient that said to me, oh, Marie, I want to have a baby, and I need to rectify my menstrual cycle, but I'm too scared to come in because of COVID or whatever, and or they're doing it by telehealth, right? So this I've had this situation before where you can get a certain amount by like I feel that it's more guessing than if I could feel their pulse. So that tells me how much I've learnt to rely on the pulse diagnosis. When you feel like without the pulse, it's a bit of a guessing. And I'll tell the patients that usually. I'm pretty honest. I'm like, okay, by your symptoms, could be this or this. It'd be great if we could feel your pulse. And if I can, refer them to someone who can. Now, I've had quite a few patients overseas that have had good results with just the herbs without the pulse, right? Because of the symptoms. But if they were more complicated, as in that didn't work, then it's going to make things harder without the pulse, I would find. Like, so I think it's good it's good to have a system that teaches you how to use pulse diagnosis properly, and it's not, you don't feel that it's willy-nilly. The other thing is, so you're asking about formulas, which is herbs, but there's many systems within acupuncture, particularly classical acupuncture kind of systems, 5-element acupuncture systems that use pulse diagnosis to check what's happened with the patient during the treatment. So as in, they feel the pulse. Usually this will happen when people are lying down. They'll feel the pulse, and then they will do the treatment and then feel it maybe just before the needles come out, or sometimes even after or whatever, and often they feel it to know whether to leave the needles in longer or take them out, or something like that. So it's got a high amount of utility, but it's also something that even practitioners seem to find it a bit mystical. They don't maybe feel confident with it. So I hope that's answered your question, Lisa. Thank you for that question. Yeah. So, if other people have questions, feel free to ask them. You can ask them on the Instagram. You can ask them on the YouTube. So, couple more questions. Let me just read this one. So this person says, hello, this is on a dampness video, how to get rid of dampness. They've said, hello, dampness, or is dampness always associated with a loose stools? I don't have loose, runny stools, but I have bloated heaviness, a heavy feeling in my lower abdomen. Can this be dampness as well? Please help. Yes. So I said to her or him, the answer is yes. Dampness is a part of those symptoms. Like, dampness could account for that. And generally what will happen is your bowels getting loose is a sign of more and more deficiency. So the more constantly your bowels are looser, that's more of a sign of deficiency. So if you had these symptoms, you just had bloated and heavy and full, you've probably got dampness, but without that spleen qi deficiency, like without that real deficient, or in the classical sense, like the tai yin area, like your spleen and lung, that water aspect of your body isn't as weak, isn't as deficient. So you probably got more yang in your body to actually consolidate the bowels and keep them from going loose. But over time, a person might become weaker, might become more deficient. That can happen. So someone's written a question here. Hello, I'm confused. So you'll need to give me more information than that. Just you have to give me an actual question. I'm not sure if that's a legitimate one or not. Um, yep. Cool. So yeah, the more if you had those symptoms of those dampy sort of symptoms, you'd want to be doing something about it, because if your stool starts to get loose, it's much harder to treat it through just diet interventions, or it just takes longer. Like, it's just a sign that your body's more depleted, more deficient. Okay, so this is a good one. We're going to have a little discussion about this, unless people have other questions they'd like to ask about the raw foods. So this is an older video that I've done on weight, mostly cooked foods, and this person saying, from a nature or natural standpoint, this doesn't make sense to me, like eating mostly cooked foods. Everything on the planet eats 100% raw for their entire lives. I can see your explanation for the spleen, that the spleen energy might not do well on raw food, but I'm interested in why it's doing that. It should work perfectly well on raw food, just like every other being on this planet. Raw food is not just for the nutrients, it's for detoxifying the body. It has an astringent value that's lost when it's cooked. Cooked food is also dead. It slows down detoxing. It has less life force and energy than raw food. Another thing is that I'm just reading this comment. Another thing is that cooked foods play an example of, another thing is cooked foods is an example of humanity playing God. The very act of cooking food is saying the food is inadequate for me. My mouse doesn't like playing this game. I have to try to get the rest of the comment, but let's answer the first bit of it first. So, I think firstly, I mean, I'm not sure, this is an older video, and oh no. So we'll come back to that one in a second about the spleen chi. That's a good question. Sorry, I didn't say that on the Instagram. So yeah, you don't have to cook everything the same. That's certainly for sure, right? You don't want to cook every single food to oblivion. And some foods you probably should just eat raw, and certainly you should eat differently in each season. Now, I've got a 3-part course that I've made on this, and it's called Better Gut Health with Chinese Medicine. So it kind of talks about those aspects. And if people are really, really interested in knowing about health with diet through Chinese medicine, that's probably the best thing I could offer you, because it's an in-depth, comprehensive, like it's three weeks of 3 hours, or 3 sessions of 3 hours. You can do it on demand. I put it in the link to the YouTube description for this one. So there's a little promo for that for that course. And that kind of, I can't sell everything in a 20-minute video. So sometimes people, say, oh, what about this? What about that? And yeah, they often have good points. So this is true. Like, you can't cook. You don't need to cook everything. And certainly in spring and like certain seasons, you don't need to have everything cooked. Spring and summer, you can have a lot more raw. But I would just disagree with this idea, like everything on the planet eats 100% raw for their entire lives. Well, humans are different to animals. I mean, that's a personal belief of mine, and it's also it's a biological thing. But I understand that we have similarities to other animals, but like, I think I'd have to do more research into evolutionary you'd have to look at a biologist or something that looks at the differences. But even though we have those similarities, we have differences. And I feel that that's part of it. I mean, part of it also is like the lifespan that we live. Like, are there really a lot of animals? There's not that many animals that live like 100 years. There are some. But maybe the cooking of the foods kind of allows us to, use up less energy than if they were raw. And that's the main principle, right? If you're cooking foods all the time, you're generally using less energy to digest the food. And that's a big principle of in Chinese medicine. All right, we'll answer this question. Firstly, let's put it on the screen. So, what points would you moxa to consolidate the bowels and treat deficient spleen qi? So that's a great question. That's from Instagram. So there's a few points you could do. So firstly, you'd go be under the belly button. So right underneath your navel, there's 2 points. So spleen 4, spleen 6. So I'm assuming you know what moxibustion is, or you've had it done before on you. So you can actually go above the umbilicus, like halfway between, like where your xiphoid process is kind of here, and your umbilicus, and you kind of go right in the middle. That's Ren 12. So you could do that as well, but the primary points where you would want to do would just be just below that umbilicus. So especially if you just lie down flat on the bed and pull up your shirt and have sort of like warmish kind of hands, not freezing hands your own self, and you just kind of palpate your own abdomen and you feel which areas are cooler. So if this area here feels cooler, or does this area here feel cooler? And that'll kind of tell you which areas. The area that's cooler is kind of the area where there's less yang there, and that's kind of the area you would want to do the moxa on. So if this area here is cooler below, that's more of a deficiency than, like a deeper kind of deficiency than if this area here is cooler, right? So you could do that. Now the second point, obviously, it's got to be stomach 36. So that's on your leg. Not sure if that's going to show up in the video, but on the knee, so just below your patella, your knee bone, you use your forefingers just below that and just off to the side of the like tibia. So it should feel like you can just look that point up. I think stomach 36 it's called. So we're talking about this question of what points would you use to treat, consolidate the bowels and treat deficient spleen qi. So stomach 36, you can press that. You can do the bird pecking method on it. So that's a good thing to do every day. So that point, stomach 36, you could moxa that. So you could alternate those points. If you also had a lower back pain, lower back soreness, you could do like the opposite of the Ren 4 or Ren 6 on the back, right? So just around on the lower back. And if you're doing this at home and you've got a moxa box, that's a good one to use, because you can just sit that little moxa box on that area and do that. Obviously, make sure you've had the proper training in how to use moxa. It's easy to burn yourself if you don't know what you're doing with the stick, with the moxa stick, and the moxa box makes it heaps less less likely that you're going to burn yourself, but it doesn't stop you from burning yourself. So, all right, I'm just going to turn that question off there. Awesome, thank you. Well, thanks for your interest in Chinese medicine and your following the channel and everything. So glad to have you here. Yeah, so if you have a question, feel free to ask it, and you can put it in YouTube, you can put it on the Instagram live. I'm just trying to catch up on the questions. I've had so many yet. I haven't done any streams for a while. I haven't done any streams, I haven't done any videos. So I thought I'd just make myself a coffee and sit here and answer the questions. So yeah, this question about the cooked foods and the raw foods is just like a common thing, and like it's good to have that discussion and to think about things. Secondly, you always have people that have extreme. You have people that get extreme pathology. You have people that get extreme like health, and they hardly ever get sick even though they are doing these extreme things. Although I've seen, for more times rather than not, people coming off that raw food, like especially if they're full raw, like everything's raw and it's cold, going into cooked foods, they feel heaps better. But I think there is a variance in our population that we don't really think about as much as maybe we should, that some things just are working for people And if that's working and their symptoms are going away and their body's getting better, their body's feeling healthier, they're having blood tests and that's showing that they're getting like the things they're trying to work on might be getting better. Like if they had high cholesterol and that's coming down, or they had high blood pressure and that's coming down, or their need for medication's less, like they're all signs that your body's getting healthier. So whatever you're doing, that must be working in some way, right? So I'm not dismissing that this couldn't work for some people. So that's important. So yeah, all right. Someone has another question about dampness and cold damp. Um, hey, they've said, hey, I've never heard of, haven't you ever heard of damp cold in Chinese medicine? It's because I had a video about damp heat, and and a few videos just about dampness. Well, I just haven't made a video about every single pattern that exists there. But also I wrote to them and said TCM is a TCM pattern for sure, but generally cold damp, it just ends up being dampness in many cases because um, there's two ways to think about dampness, right? One is that dampness comes in from the environment, and that's generally what you see in the TCM books about damp heat, damp cold, wind, cold, like wind and cold and heat, these 6 environmental pathogens, right? That we're always in cahoots with, or in, I shouldn't say in cahoots with, in combat with in the environment. We're not in cahoots with them. That they're always trying to like attack us in a way, or like we have to battle those things. Now, you're not really battling damp and cold unless your house gets flooded or unless there's a flood near you. Now, if that happens, right, if anyone's ever been through a flood, there's damp and cold everywhere, and you're literally like wading in that damp, cold water. And that would be true damp, cold for coming in from the environment. Now, it could be someone living in a damp house. Like I've had a patient recently that has had like horrific thing happen to a house, and like it hasn't been repaired properly and has to live in this moldy house at the moment, or has had to for quite some time. So a person says, I just got a question there. In Ireland, getting ready to go to work. Oh, it must be early for you. Sorry about that. Early in the morning. Any advice on warming foods for breakfast on the go? Okay, so a good one is cinnamon, right? So cinnamon and ginger are the 2 best herbs you can add into the foods. So you could do cinnamon and ginger in a tea. You could add that to your tea, like a chai kind of thing. You could put that into your porridge. You want to have a decent amount of cinnamon, not just like a sprinkle of cinnamon, but like enough that you can taste it. And I like to buy fresh ginger. If you really sort of feel like it doesn't last long in your fridge or something, you can get the dried ginger and just keep that and use that from time to time. So those are really good warming foods that can help you to add to your breakfast. So oats and like rice porridge, but particularly oats, are going to be really hearty, as in they're going to, because they're a bit stodgy, they're going to like that's going to create a bit of warmness in your digestion. So if you like eating porridge, that's kind of good. But if you're having you're saying getting ready to go on the go, like you're in a massive hurry. It's like where's my food? I kind of you might need to prepare it the night before. So making the congee the night before is a really good one to do. You just buy a slow cooker and you put all your stuff in, the night before, and then you wake up in the morning and it's kind of ready to go. So you could put you can do an oats congee if you want, but you don't usually do that. You usually do rice, and then you could put a stick of cinnamon in there, like a big stick of cinnamon, and just pull that out. Or you could have your cinnamon that's kind of ground, and then just add some in and add a few slices of ginger. And what else could you do? And you can put those 2 herbs into lots of things. Pears are a good one in the morning for breakfast as well. Like you put that into your congee. Just trying to think of something you could do real quickly if you're not prepared. It's hard to. Oh, miso soup is a good one. So you can buy little sachets of miso soup, like the paste, and boil the kettle. Put that miso soup into your cup, and make a travel cup's worth of soup, and kind of take that miso soup. It's very salty. That's a good one to have. You can add spring onions, like fresh spring onions, into that. And that's not really that warming, like spring onions wouldn't be warming, but they're just like, they're going to be chi moving. So that's good to have first thing in the morning. Yeah, so hopefully that's kind of helpful in that way. Yeah, if people have a question on Instagram or Facebook, well, we're not on Facebook, so that's pointless saying that. A question on YouTube, please feel free to ask it. I'm just going to scroll through my other questions. So damp and cold, that's a big one. I probably will make just a video about that damp and cold. So what I was saying about dampness is it can come in from the environment, like literally you're wading around in damp and cold water. Or it can come from yourself. So when it's coming from internally, there's a deficiency there. There's not enough like spleen qi or spleen yang to transform and transport. And so the fluids that are there, the transformation that should be happening isn't happening, and fluids build up. And when fluids build up, they start being thin fluids, and then they get thicker. And then that becomes like a damp kind of thing. So people might have, with dampness, they typically get a foggy headedness, like a cloudy head. I feel like I'm walking around in a cloud. I feel easily confused or vague. They feel bogged down, heavy. That can happen with damp cold or damp heat, right? They're just damp symptoms. And when it's damp heat, there's a heating up of the fluid, so they kind of become yellow and sticky and probably very smelly. The bowels would get real smelly. Whereas damp cold is like just the absence of the heat means that it will be cold pretty much. So you can have like damp cold in the extremities. Like on the other way that damp cold can happen is actually if you go outside and you I don't know, go for a run or something in the cold weather. Like you're exposed to the damp and cold, and you're hanging around in your damp cold clothing, and that can kind of cause that to happen, like as well. And sometimes with damp cold, they get things in their joints like coldness, a cold feeling, or a pain or swelling in the joints, like an arthritis-y sort of symptoms can be damp cold as well. So right, here's a good question about vegetables. So this was on a video about how to help your spleen qi, how to tonify your spleen qi. And one was just, I think I was talking about not having packet foods and having more fresh foods, right? And this person says, what about frozen vegetables that you steam? Is it better to use fresh vegetables than buying them frozen? So yes, like fresh is always better than frozen, right? For sure, right? The fresher it is, the more closer it is to being picked, for sure. Now, depending on what the vegetables are and what's it like, what's the likelihood of you getting that, and how fresh is that in the store that you're buying it, then maybe sometimes the frozen ones might be better because they might have been picked and then instantly frozen, versus some foods in the supermarket can be stored for months and months, even years. Like apples, I know in our supermarkets, we have apples that go on sale that have been in cold storage for a long time. They're not frozen, I think, but they're extremely cold, like almost frozen, and they can just last and last in that cold environment. So that's one thing. Second thing is, like, to fit it into your lifestyle, if it means that the difference between not eating those vegetables at all, like, then go and get the frozen ones. Like, I know some people that they maybe they will change if they could change if they wanted to, but they're not going to at this point in time. Let's just say that. And you come home from work and you're like, I need this. If I don't have this like little bag of veggies that I can like quickly steam. Now I would avoid putting them in the microwave. I know you get these little steam fresh bags and you put them into the microwave and they steam the vegetables. If you can just steam them a bit more without the microwave, that's good. Certainly better for you. I just think microwaves are the devil. Like, they're very hard to stop using once people start using them, and they're not healthy for you. Who knows what they're doing to those nutrients in the foods. So yeah, you just want to like do the best thing that you can within your circumstances. So if that's all you can do, or that's better than what you were doing before, then do those frozen vegetables, right? And then you might feel that, okay, well, 2 or 3 days a week, I'm not going to do that. I'll do something else. I'll do the fresh ones. Yeah, it just depends on, like, I've had the experience where I've gone to the supermarket and I've bought lots of fresh vegetables, and then by 5 days into the week, those vegetables just looking terrible. They're not able to last in your fridge that long, that kind of stuff. So it's not like, it depends on how long you can shop, like that sort of stuff. Like, do the best that you can in the circumstances you've got. But yes, fresh is always better than frozen. Frozen vegetables are better than frozen other things. Snacky foods. Okay. So someone says, I'm confused in the diagnosis of my digestion problems, whether it's spleen qi deficiency or something else. Yep. So I can't give people individual advice on this stream or channel, just because of it's probably not it's not possible. You would have to give a lot of your own personal details and things like that, and also that's kind of not what we do. But yeah, generally with a spleen qi deficiency, you're going to have, like, that's the core of digestion problems. So if you have digestion problems, I'm not saying 100%, but most of the time your spleen qi is going to be weak. And if you do just do things to tonify your spleen qi, that's not going to hurt you if your spleen qi is good. So you wouldn't say, oh, like, if I eat healthier, that might hurt me some way. No, it's not going to. Everyone who's not spleen qi deficient should be doing the things to help their spleen qi, because if you don't do that, everyone will get spleen qi deficient eventually. That's how you'll lose your ability to digest food, right? And you'll, not everyone, I shouldn't say every single person, but that's a common part of aging. So it wouldn't matter if it's, like, if you start doing the self-help things to help your spleen qi, that's surely got to be healthy, right? For you and good for you. But I would encourage you to see your own practitioner or seek out help in that way. Otherwise you won't kind of know. Okay, so Bill C says, I guess liver qi stagnation can cause spleen qi deficiency and spleen blood deficiency. Yeah, so you have the 5 elements. My pencil's not here. I can't really do this because I don't have that little pencil. But so you have, like, the 5 elements goes in a circle. So wood, fire, earth, metal, water, right? And so wood and earth are those 2 elements that you're talking about there. So liver qi, so the liver's job is to spread and move. And when it's not doing that, it's not, like, one of the spreading and moving functions of liver qi is actually helping peristalsis, so that movement of foods through your gut. And that can affect your spleen energy, like your spleen qi, your earth. So the other aspect that can happen in the 5 element cycle is like a pathological cycle is what's called the controlling cycle. So it's like the wood element sort of punching into the earth element. So it's like bullying it or forcing its energy into that and not control. Like, it should control it. Like, by control it, we mean, like, look after it. Sort of like a big brother and a little brother kind of situation. Like, you're looking after them. You're not bullying them, right? And you're not lording it over them. Like, I'm in charge and I'm the best one and I'm better than you and you must do what I say. And sometimes wood liver gets like that in some people and forces that energy onto the spleen. And particularly that can happen when the spleen isn't strong. And that's why I like that analogy of that, bullying brother and sister, because like that used to happen in our family. I was probably the bully because I'm the older one. But, you see that sibling rivalry happen, and as that's happening, the younger sibling, or the one that's being bullied on, is kind of if they are strong enough to resist it, the other one will kind of stop. And that sometimes what happens with the wood and the earth is that the wood sort of pushing its energy into the earth, because the earth's like suddenly gotten weak and then lets it happen. But if you make the earth stronger, it kind of resists the bullying, and that could be a way of it. And then the second thing you say is spleen blood deficiency. So you have blood deficiency in Chinese medicine for sure, but we don't really use the pattern of spleen blood deficiency, because the spleen isn't really, like in Western medicine, it makes the blood cells in the spleen, but in Chinese medicine, it doesn't do a lot to make blood that doesn't come from digestion. So it does, like in TCM, they have the 3 organs that are involved in blood production, and the spleen's one of those things. But it's more the liver. So what would happen in this situation is liver qi stagnation and liver blood deficiency. That's what you'd probably see. And I don't think you see many books say spleen qi deficiency, liver qi stagnation and spleen blood deficiency. You just call it blood deficiency. And when you treat blood deficiency, it can be treated like often spleen points would be used or liver points would be used. But yeah, so those two things are like the yin and the yang aspects of wood, right? The yang aspects of wood is the qi, the movement, and the yin aspects is the blood of wood. Oh, good. Lots of questions coming. That's good. So this person says, I have high hunger. Oh, that was related to the other one. Can you speak Mandarin? Yes, a little bit. Dian. A tiny bit. Terrible Mandarin. I can speak a bit. When I go to China, I try to talk Chinese to use it. I've been to China 11 times. The first time I went was 2001, and I couldn't speak any Chinese. You learn it in Chinese medicine school in like first year. Then like 4 years goes past, and you like go to China, and you're like, oh, where's that Chinese that I that I learned? Because it was a really good experience going at that time when I went, 2001. Because there wasn't many people speaking English there at all. And I remember going into like restaurants and there wasn't even any English on the menu, or pictures. Sometimes some menus did have picture menus. Most of the time I'd have to walk around the restaurant looking for what other people were eating and point to that. And then I could learn how to say wo yao zhige and point to it. Then I would be like, okay, good. I can get my food. So how I've learned Chinese was on the basic necessity level. So I learned like terso, like the toilet, and those things first. What I needed to survive. One of my favorite Chinese words, the 2 favorite Chinese words I have is like gong gong chi che, like that means bus. And I love that word because it's so long, and the English word for bus is short, right? Bus, B-U-S. And then in Chinese it's like gong gong chi che. And also when you're speaking Chinese, like I'm a singer and I kind of feel the sing song in the words. And when I first started really committing to learn Chinese, I used to listen to I used to use this thing called Chinese Pod, and it would have a short conversation and then and 1 or 2 words and repeat, and I would do that. And then I bought these tapes, that's showing my age, cassette tapes in China, and I would put them in my car or wherever I was and listen to those. In my Walkman, actually, that's why I had tapes, because I had a Walkman, Sony Walkman. This is what I had in China. I had a Walkman with like 2 or 3 cassette tapes, and that kind of thing. So yes, I can speak a tiny bit of Chinese. My second favorite Chinese word is mama hoo hoo, because it just makes me laugh saying it. And even some Chinese don't even use that word. I just think they should use mama hoo hoo much more commonly than people do. So mamahuhu means so. So if you say how are you, uh, I can't even remember. Say how are you now? That's very terrible. I can't remember that. Anyway, so just escaped my mind, but I can remember mamahuhu. And it just makes people laugh. It makes me laugh saying it, and it makes Chinese people laugh when you say that. Um, you know, it's all right. So bit of good, bit of bad. Okay, so someone asked me, do they say this? They say the spleen does a lot. I don't know if they mean the spleen primary channel or part of Tai Yin, or the great spleen channel. Does the great spleen channel have points? Okay, lots of questions there. The spleen, when they say the spleen does a lot, yeah. So there's some organs that I kind of seem to be harped on a lot more in Chinese medicine than others. They're all important. I think one of the things that we don't hear a lot about, for instance, but super important, would be heart. And that's a good thing, right? Like, you don't want heart problems. Like, you don't want your heart to be having issues, right? There's a big problem if there's that going on, right? You're really sick. So some organs contribute more to other things, other systems more than others, right? And one of the things with your spleen or your earth element is one of the cycles is the cosmological cycle, where it's in the center, and all it's used to, transport the energy to all the other elements, and that represents its central function in digestion. So, like, you can only make energy by digesting food and by breathing and eating. So you can't kind of, you can't, like you can't get away from its need to be used in that way. So that's one of the things. And it says, when he says the spleen does a lot, yeah. So most of the time it's the primary channel that's going to be used to treat the spleen in acupuncture. It's going to be used, you mostly use the lower leg and the foot area commonly. The upper thigh part probably isn't used that much. Like that great low point that you're talking about, spleen 21, that's the point that connects to that great low. So that's sort of under, like on the axilla, kind of down, in this kind of area. And that could be used. So you could have the patient on the side, and it could be used in massaging in between the ribs there. So, like, it's quite a very sensitive point, right on the midline. I think it's in line with the bottom of with the root of the breast. Have to just double check. That's the point that's actually got two locations possibly. So that's spleen 21, Da Bao, that point. And I think that's probably not commonly used in treatment as it could be because of its location, because it can easily, you could easily puncture the lungs if it wasn't needled properly. So, and sometimes in practice you find that practitioners, clinicians like to just have people to pull up their pants and pull up their sleeves, and that's quite often what I do. Like, I don't needle, or maybe just pull up this area. I don't kind of have people in these weird positions that are gonna, like, unless it's like super necessary to treat that. But it is a point that I think it's a point that isn't used as much as it probably could be used more. So Bill C, I'll come back to the other point question in a sec. I guess the Do and the Ren are the only extraordinary. Yes, they are. So the other channels all have to be accessed through these, like, connecting points, right? Specific points. And even the Ren and the Do. So there's 8 extraordinary channels or extraordinary vessels, and the Ren and the Do have, you have like your Yin Wei Mai, Yin Chao Mai, Yang Wei Mai, Yang Chao Mai, your Ren and your Do, your Chong Mai, and your Dai Mai. So these kind of things, and that great uh, spleen channel is another one, just an extra another vessel after those 8 ones. Okay, so Lisa asks, how relevant is the pulse diagnosis in the style? Yeah, so super relevant. Like it's the highest thing. It's the highest pecking order. Like it's the most important. So I think I'm not sure when you jumped in, but when I answered the first part of your question before about like it wasn't until I had to face not being able to see patients face to face in my practice because of COVID, like I realized I was relying on the pulse much more than I ever used to. So when I did TCM school, I hardly relied on the pulse because it's just how we're taught. It's not taught properly. And I think that's also because you need that consistent practice with the same teacher or the same style. And what happens in TCM school is you have lots and lots of different clinical supervisors, which is good from other perspectives. So you get exposed to different ways. But then are you really able to kind of hone in on like getting good at one thing, or are you sort of a jack of all trades kind of an idea? So yeah, I in the style of Chinese medicine I practice, like I really use it, I really rely on it, and that's a specific part of the lineage system of ICEAM. Like it's different to other lineage systems. Like some lineages don't rely on the pulse as much, or they think about it in a different way, which is fine. That's just how they do it. Yeah. So yeah, if people have other questions, now's a good time to ask them. I think people maybe in the US are going to bed, and people in the UK might be like the island guy, might be very early in the morning for you. It's actually just one. It's 12:50 in the middle of the day for me today. I'm about to start my patients in a little while, so I thought I'll jump on the stream now and get some questions answered that I haven't done for a while. All right. I need to mention a couple of things. I just was scrolling through my comments. So I recently did an interview with Dr. Simon Feeney, who runs a company called Empirical Health Herbs, and we talked about mushrooms. It's a really good conversation about them, and interesting. So I think you'll enjoy that. And there's a promo code with that if you're interested in getting those products. And if you use that promo code, it actually supports the channel as well. So it supports me. It's a promotional thing. Well, I don't do those. That's the first one I've done. I hardly ever do those things. So he makes all those products himself in their factory in Port Macquarie, and they're very highly committed to super duper like efficacy, like effectiveness of the products, and what the quality of ingredients and things like that. So I should probably just mention that. So if you jump onto that link, you can actually get a promo code and you can get a discount. You'll get a discount, and when you purchase it, we get a benefit from that. So you're supporting the channel by doing that. That's good. Yeah, okay, thank you. CS, hey, join this live chat for the first time. Watch your videos, but I've never made it to a live Q&A. Yeah, that's probably because I don't do them. I hardly do them. I'm back. Yeah, that's fine. It's hard being in Australia to match the times for other people around the world. And what happens is I think, oh, I'll do a stream, and then, by the time you set up all the gear and everything, an hour goes past sometimes, and then I don't have time to do the stream. That's happened before, but also the time slot, trying to fit in with the rest of the world. So I really should use this space more. I've got this lovely space that I'm sitting in now. This is my recording studio for my music, and it's so peaceful here and quiet, and the audio is good because no one's in my other place. Like I used to do a lot of my recording from home, and had a little studio area set up, but there was always noise there. My neighbours were always making noise in the yelling and screaming, and then there was traffic, and this is beautiful, so peaceful. All right, so if people have questions, now's the time to answer them. CS, hey, CS, hey, CS. If you have a question, now's the time to ask it. It doesn't matter if it's just a simple question. I'm happy to answer those things. Just scrolling through, see if we got any other ones here. Oh, okay, right. Here's a good question. Someone said, which of these methods are most powerful for treatments? Acupuncture, moxibustion, or acupressure? Okay, so I think obviously moxibustion and it's hard to answer that actually because they all have different benefits, and it depends what you're treating. So let's say that, and I'll give you the things that are from my experience, and that where each one has its place being better than the other, right? So obviously acupressure has a benefit that anyone can press the points. I would never expect or promote people using acupuncture on themselves if they're not a practitioner, right? So that's one thing. Okay, acupuncture has the benefit over acupressure where you can have multiple points in there at once, where you can't have that with acupressure. Now, when this person says acupressure, I'm not sure if they're meaning like just pressing. So this is acupressure if I just press on a point. But if I do Twainer, like I start doing this massaging or something, or I'm just, show, like if this is Twainer, right? If I start doing this massaging on myself, Twainer and acupressure have much more of a chance of treating the channel and a broader stroke approach for some things. And for some musculoskeletal things, especially where there's like a stiffness, like if a person had a frozen shoulder and they couldn't move it, there's a power in that acupuncture doesn't have as good. It's not as beneficial. In some cases where there's really bad inflammation in the area, like it's really painful. Like for instance, 2 weeks ago, I was walking through a door and I cut the edge of my toe right on the edge of the door. Now, I felt like I wasn't sure whether it cut the nail. It was so close to the nail. It didn't cut the nail, but it was like really close to the nail. It was on my great toe, on my big toe. It was just incredibly painful. And when I got home, I thought, oh, I've broken my toe for sure. Definitely broken it. And I had to put I had to like put a bandage on it and stuff, stop the bleeding and all that because it was bleeding a lot. And then the next day I was like, what's the damage here? Like I put some herbs on it actually. In classical Chinese medicine we use this formula called Wang Bu Liu Xing San, and that kind of cleared it up quite quickly. But what I'm getting at is you would not be massaging an area like that to get blood flow there because it's just too painful to touch it. Like it's too painful to do anything with it. But acupuncture in that sense could help. And there's some things, again, moxa could probably help in that way too. And the third area, the next thing, the last thing I want to say about this is moxa has a special function for expelling cold and tonifying the yang that the other things don't have. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, there's a few more here. So CS, I'm not really an expert so much on acupuncture, so I don't know. Some of these acupuncture questions are probably like a bit like that's not my special area. Yeah. So I'll have a talk about some of those things, but I might not have the answer for you. I can answer that Sanjiao one for sure. So CS says, can you talk about lunars, the half moons on your fingers? Oh, okay, right. Sorry, I thought you meant like as in the lunar cycle. I was like, oh, that's out of my scope. I noticed when my health was bad, I only had 1 to 2 lunars on my fingers, but now I got better. I have 5 to 6. Yeah, so you mean like these little white things that come up on your nails, like little um, sort of scoops or white marks? Is that what you mean on the nails? Maybe you can put that in the comments. Is it in the nails you mean, or yeah, it's the nails, right? Not the not on your fingers. So the nails relate to blood, right, and liver blood, and also to kidneys. Like nails are an extent, a type of bone in a way. You can think of nails, right? Yeah. So it's technically like in that the quality of your nails relates to liver blood. So when you say your health was bad, you only had a few, but now you feel better. There's more. That doesn't make sense. It should be less, but maybe what you've done might be a little. I mean, maybe you had some there that were starting and they were growing out. I mean, in Chinese medicine, you have like a hierarchy of kind of thinking of things. So for me, if you were my patient, I'd probably just check the pulse and use that as more of the guidance as to whether things are getting better or not. Sometimes I guess there might be things that kind of just come out of you as your body's getting better. There can be a process of that happening. But generally, the quality of your nails. So if they're brittle, if there's a lot of lines, like vertical sort of lines going this way, then that is a liver blood deficiency kind of thing. Now, it could be because of what you've done to get better might have actually depleted your liver blood a bit more, right? So if you don't have to put your own personal details in the comments and stuff, but like maybe you've gotten a bit more blood deficient, although you might feel better from other things. Something that you might be doing might be taxing your liver more. Like sometimes with things like alcohol or coffee, that could be straining your liver qi more, and that could then be straining your liver blood. Mostly liver blood deficiency comes from like not eating enough warm cooked foods, like that spleen qi deficiency leading to blood deficiency, or not enough meats. Like if you've become a vegetarian or something like that, could be part of it. Hope that's helpful. Okay, so someone says, is the Sanjiao, so Bill C says, is the Sanjiao and the Dantian the same thing? That's confusing. No, they're not the same thing, totally different things. So hopefully we'll clear up the confusion. So the Dantian refers to an area of like your body in this area here, right? So in your below your umbilicus. Now, I'm not an expert on Qigong and Tai Chi, but that's the area that's used to focus. And it's kind of related to this Ming Men. So the Dantian is related to the Ming Men, which is considered like between the two kidneys on your back, like this fire, right? Or this kidney energy that's there. So that's what the Dantian is. So it's like this refers to that area here, and you'd be focusing on that when you're doing Qigong or Tai Chi or something like that. It's something that's come along later in Chinese medicine. It's not really a part of classical Chinese medicine. It's sort of not sure what dynasty it came into it, but it's not Han Dynasty concept. Anyway, so then the Sanjiao is an organ. Okay, so this is one of the most mysterious things in Chinese medicine that makes you wonder, like as a practitioner, it makes me wonder, what the hell did those people know back then? Like, how did they know about this? Because it's only been through very, very recent medical discoveries that they've even hinted at the concept of the Sanjiao, right? So the Sanjiao means, so San means 3 and Jiao means area, right? So it refers to a few things. It's considered an organ, so it's listed as one of the 12 organs, right, of the body. So in that sense, it's like a standalone organ by itself. But it's also an idea of like grouping of areas in the body. So thinking about like it describes the upper jiao, the middle jiao, the lower jiao as different things. So it says the upper jiao is like a fine mist, the middle jiao is a bubbling cauldron, the lower jiao is a drainage ditch. And what that means is like it's talking about how fluids are metabolized in the body and how your body likes that. So for instance, like I might drink this water, and how my body purposes this water and where it puts it is going to be different. So if I had this much water in my lower jiao, in my bladder, that would be normal, natural, but in my lungs, that would be pathological, because my lungs are like a fine mist. So if I drink this water and my body's going to use this water in my lungs, it should make it into a fine mist. So for me to have any amount of water in my lungs would be very uncomfortable, very painful. I'll be sick. That's a flu, right? A cold or whatever, like some kind of pathology there. But I need this water in my bladder. Like that area is designed to contain that. So that's kind of the idea of the Sanjiao, is a description of how those areas of the body should function. It's also seen as the transportation or the transmission of fluids through the body. So it's a fluid metabolism kind of concept. The harmony of those different organs in those areas. So like in the upper jiao, you have the heart, pericardium, the lungs. So what are the similarities between those organs? In the middle jiao, you have the spleen and the stomach. In the lower jiao, you have like your uterus, your bladder, your kidneys. There's just different things that so that's, we could talk for ages about that, and I don't want to confuse you even more, but that's kind of the idea. I think you might be studying Chinese medicine, Bill C, or you're a very keen learner, like you seem. Are you a Chinese medicine student? Oh, it's nothing wrong. I didn't want to say that in a way that made it sound bad. It just means you've got very detailed questions, and that's good that you do. And that's kind of how you learn, is discussing those things, right? Yes. Upper warmer. Yeah. So they like jiao. Sometimes the Sanjiao is also called the triple heater, the triple warmer. So it's got all these different names. So Sanjiao is the Chinese name, but they translate that into, the triple warmer, the triple heater, or I just probably call it the Sanjiao because it's less confusing in a way, right? Yumi Coffee now sent you a request to be in your live video. I'm not sure what you want to do in the live, what you want to do in the live video. I've not done that before. That's on the Instagram. Okay. You can ask if you want to ask a question. You can jump onto the live video. Maybe just put that in the comments. I'm not sure yeah. All right, we've got some other questions here. Someone says, hi, lately I've been suffering from eczema, itchy skin due to blood heat. It flares mostly at night. Can you recommend some diet or foods to help? I think in general I've been too heaty. Yeah, so blood heat. The general thing you want to do... Okay, someone's asked a question, yep. Oh, yeah, that's okay. I'm just answering the Instagram person at the same time. Didn't know about... Yeah, that's happened to me before, where it said Instagram prompts you to ask for a live video. I don't use it that much because it happened to me before. It's like, you should request to be in their live video, and next thing you know, you've pressed on a button and yeah. So they've asked a question about how long to overcome a spleen chi deficiency. So I'll answer this one first, and then we'll come back to that one. So the blood heat at night. It just, I don't want to sound strange, but yeah, it should go without saying, like, to just start with the mostly cooked foods most of the time, right? The full and empty, like, go for those general principles first. That will give your body less work, it makes it less burdensome on it, right? If you're ever eating anything late at night, like, so firstly, when you think about diet, the first thing you should think about is what do you need to eliminate rather than what do you need to add in. Because if you just eliminate something, that might be better than just trying to add in, like eating one food to help this sort of thing doesn't always fix it, that sort of stuff. So if you eat late at night, that can create heat in your digestive system, which then can flare up, especially causes people like crazy dreams. They call them the pizza dreams, right? Like when I was a kid, that's what that's, oh, if you had some pizza dreams because you've eaten pizza late at night or something. Like that's a big one. So if there's none, if you're not having, like, sugar, for sure, like sugar is going to cause that. So try to go off sugar or low sugar or as least sugar as you can, especially in the evening, night, which might be hard. I get that it could be really hard to do that. Like, and this is where itchiness, so itchiness in Chinese medicine, one of its relationships is in your mind, in your shen, in your heart. So in that fire element. So sugar and salt have big effects on the fire element in terms of flavors. So you want to try to avoid those two things in terms of like eating those things late at night, because they can especially cause this whole like, oh, I feel sugary, I feel salty, like not sugary or salty, but I feel like sugar, I feel like salt, I feel like sugar, I feel like salt. Like they can have this alternating effect where you feel like that stuff. So that clear, bland diet can be really useful for this sort of situation. If it's summertime or coming into summer where you are now, looks like you're writing, got some Chinese there, so you're probably in the opposite season to me, so you might be coming into winter. You could, if it's still warm where you live, like you could have some cooling foods like cucumber, can be useful. Not like too much raw, but small amounts of that, like cucumber juice or cucumber. Chrysanthemum tea can sometimes be helpful. Like that particularly can be good for itching, and also could be used on the skin, like juhua or chrysanthemum can be used on the skin. Another herb that's used a lot, and you have to be careful with this herb because it can be too cooling for you, but Jinyanhua is another one. Honeysuckle. It sounds nice, honeysuckle. Who wouldn't want a bit of honeysuckle? But it's quite a bitter, cooling herb. So you can use Jinyanhua, honeysuckle, chrysanthemum, juhua, and your green tea kind of together as a tea drink. You can try that to kind of cool things down. Like in classical Chinese medicine, we don't use a lot of that stuff, as like TCM loves these cooling, heaty, reducing things like that. But in classical Chinese medicine, we tend to not have too much of that because it can damage your yang. Okay, so we'll come back to one of the questions on YouTube in a minute. And this one from Instagram says, Yumi Coffee Now. What a great name. That's a good one. So I don't want to be in the video. That's right. How long does it take to overcome a spleen chi deficiency? Any herbs or Chinese medicines that could help spleen deficiency? So, the answer to that can be hard to give. Like, how long have you had it for, versus, or not so much even had the diagnosis, because you would have had those symptoms before you got to the diagnosis probably. So how long? It could be quite a long time, and it could be months and months if you commit regularly to treatment, as in So I think the highest form of treatment for that would be Chinese herbal medicine. If you go and see a classical Chinese herbal medicine practitioner, they're going to use a lot more warmer herbs. So things like ganjiang, and there's other herbs that I won't say here, but there's other herbs that herbalists can use, like formulas that can use to kind of warm your gut, and that could be more quicker response to the treatment. The ultimate herb you can use for yourself would be ginger, and that's like quite safe and effective to kind of use as a herb to use at home. Like, it's, you can buy it from any supermarket, you can buy it from Coles or whatever, wherever you live. So you want to use lots of ginger in your cooking, and that herb has a specific effect to your stomach. It really helps warm your stomach, and it helps strengthen your earth element. So that's the main herb to kind of strengthen your earth. And the problem with spleen chi deficiency is it just persists. And a lot of the time with spleen chi deficiency, people, just reading the comments you've got there, bloody ages that you've had the symptoms plus liver chi stagnation. Yep. So I do have a course that I've made called Better Gut Health, which is a 3-part course, 3 hours each time. It's a really in-depth course. It's the best one that I've done, actually. The best course that I've made so far, I think. And it's about how to have better gut health, and it's available now on demand, so you can get that and do that course, and that will teach you how to overcome that spleen chi deficiency in that 3-part thing with what you need to do for your diet. And it's not just like, oh, here's the 5 things you need to eat, but it's about recognizing how long you've had something for, and sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. Recognizing like how to respond when those early symptoms happen, so that it doesn't progress on crazily, with like prolonged symptoms. But let me give you, so your first thing you want to do is go on the cooked diet. So if you haven't gone on my YouTube channel before, go and watch that video that's called like Why Eat Mostly Cooked Foods. And then there's other videos that I've got about how to avoid dampness, which are still like, that's helping your spleen chi. So that's other foods you can kind of use, right? Within those warm cooked foods, warm cooked and moist, like having mostly that, just avoiding the cold, dry and raw. In summer, if it's coming into summer, if you're in Australia, then you can start to have a bit more raw, but definitely include that ginger, right? Lots of slow cook, lots of ginger in the diet, and see how you feel with that. Now, that's not going to hurt the liver chi stagnation. That will help it. Like, ginger's generally good for that because it's a pungent herb. It's kind of moving. For the liver chi stagnation, you can do more stretching, and like you can massage your gallbladder channel here, kind of at the side. That's a good thing to do, like this hitting, and much better to do that when you're standing up, not sort of sloshing out on the couch like this. Yep. Okay, so you did watch Cook Foods and the Dampness videos. I'm awesome, thank you. You're in Brisbane. Yep. So you can send me an email if you want to find. There's a practitioner. One of my teachers is in Brisbane, and he's really good. So if you want to go down the herbs road, and he can check your pulse and do that sort of stuff, and he's really good. But you can send me an email or you send me a message on Instagram, because you're on Instagram, and I'll send you the link to the course if that's something you want to sign up for. So that's that bit. So the warm cooked and moist, the ginger in the foods. I know it sounds very simple, but it's kind of like useful. Your liver chi likes pungent things. So cinnamon, coriander, ginger, mint, basil, lemongrass, like curries. It likes that. Like, your liver chi likes to be moving. It likes regular exercise. If you're sitting around and you're stagnant, that doesn't help your liver chi, right? So if you get your liver chi moving, that can then sometimes stop it punching into the spleen, the earth, right? Like that bullying effect. And if your earth element's weaker, then that's when you sort of get liver chi stagnation. Like people get very stressed and upset, but then their stomach gets upset. Their stomach gets like, oh, I feel sick. I feel like nauseous, from the stress of life. So, yep. I've probably got about 10 more minutes because I've got a patient coming soon, so I've got to get organised for that. Let's have a quick look. There's a few more questions here. Someone's asking, generally, how often do you need to do acupressure in order for the acupressure to be effective? Or does it depend on the technique and the condition of the body? Yeah, look, if you've got pain, you should expect it to stop straight away. Like as in not like, oh, press it, like, boop, pain's gone. But you should be able to feel a connection between what you're doing and the effects of it. So what you generally do is, so sometimes let's say a good point to press often is this whole chi point right here, small intestine 3. Now, if I just sort of touch it like this, I'll just put it up there so people can see here, and this one kind of here, right? Now, if I just kind of touch on my hand and I'm not really I'm just tapping on it, that's not doing anything. You need you need the back of a pen, but the only thing I've got on this desk in front of me is a pair of scissors, and I'm not going to use those to press into my hand. You need something to press into it, so the back of a pen to push in, right? So it's kind of got to do with where the points are and pressing them effectively. Now, if I press that hard enough and I can feel, so when you do acupressure, you should feel what you feel with acupuncture: achy, tingly, heaviness, numbness, a descending feeling, like a distension, a heavy feeling, any of those things. Okay, that means you're pressing it, you're getting it right. Don't press the points so that you are bruised or it's really hurting and it's too much for you, right? So you've got the point right. Now, if I come back to this point, I probably don't have to press it as long to get that same effect. Now, if this point's often used for sore back. So if I'm pressing it, I move my back around, I might bend back and forwards. It should feel a bit better. If you're using it for stress, like you might just press it, do some exercise with the pressing. You might press this point, you might come, other points on your head. You might come back to the points. There could be a routine that you use as part of it. I think to answer your question, like, this is a really miscellaneous question because no one ever says how long do you need to press the points for. But think about when you have acupuncture, like, there's a few ways it could be done. One is the needles go in, they're very strongly stimulated, like you feel it, and then it comes out. Now, when it comes out, you still feel the feeling from the points there. So I think you should try to replicate that with the acupressure. Sometimes with acupuncture, people stick the needles in and then they leave you there for a while. And while you're lying there, something's happening. Like you're feeling something kind of coming to the point, something going on. So that could be a way of kind of replicating it with acupressure. But no one's probably going to want to sit there and press this for 20 minutes, like keeping on doing that. So that's kind of that. So yes, it does depend on the technique you're using and how long you've had the problem for. But if it's something acute that's just happened to you, you should expect the effects to happen pretty quickly. So yeah, someone says, Savage Bunny, my stomach is cold, but if I eat ginger, my eyes get bloodshot. Yep. So yeah, you maybe don't eat the ginger then. So this is a difference between one herb and a formula of herbs. I've had some patients with severe conditions, and so there's a couple of things I want to mention. One is, like, I've had some patients with severe conditions that, like, the standard treatment isn't even enough, right? And it might take a few formulas and a lot of messing around with the doses, like trialing, just slightly increasing the dose of something, very gently, very specifically until you've got the right formula there. Foods like individual food treatments tend to be much more about prevention and like early treatment. They're not very good for things that have been going on for a long time, that where you've already got an established condition. That's not what people want to hear, but that's the truth of it. And I'm not saying the foods can't help you. Certainly they can. And eating the wrong foods can make you even worse. But the food treatment by itself isn't often enough. Like if you have a cold stomach, that's quite a developed condition. Like it's not something that just happened from probably one night of eating ice cream. Oh, my stomach's cold. I'll have some ginger tomorrow. It'll all be good. Like if you've got an established condition, like there could be multifaceted things that happen. And whenever you warm your body up, what can happen is the yang that you're warming kind of flares out. Now, when in classical Chinese medicine, we have a strategy to kind of treat this, and we would know by your pulse what to do, like how to go about that. That's one of the things that pulse diagnosis is really good for, because it kind of helps us work out which bit do we treat first when people have a lot of stuff going on. So it can be really complicated. And I love doing these streams, and I like helping people, and I want people to be able to do the things that are cheap and free. And you're going to eat food anyway, so you may as well eat food that's going to help you. But there are some times where food by itself as a treatment isn't enough. You kind of need both herbs and acupuncture, or either or of those. You need some kind of physical treatment as well as the foods. So yeah, I hope this stream's been helpful and useful to people. Thank you very much for staying around. Thanks for your questions. People on Instagram and Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. I'll try and do more of these. Obviously, this is a good time for some people, as I'm surprised. So that's good, because this is a good time for me. In the middle of the day, I'm all alert and awake and everything, and yeah. So hope you take care of yourself. If you're interested in contacting me about the courses and you can't see the links, you can send me an email or a direct message. On most of my videos on YouTube, I have my email there somewhere. You can find it. If you're on Instagram, you can send me a direct message and I'll send you a link to that. I've also got a personality course. I will have a course soon, but I've got a personality types quiz that I made, and the link to that is in the YouTube stream for this one. So you can do the test. I made the test up myself. Probably took me like a whole day to make that test up. And yeah, it's a really fun way of doing that. And when you sign up to that, you'll be in my mailing list. And I didn't do it today, but normally I just use that to email people and let them know when the stream's on. I forgot to do that today. So you'll get notified then when a stream's coming, if you want to ask more questions and things like that. So thanks everyone. Keep looking after yourself and enjoy the weather. If you're in Australia, it's springtime coming. Not yet. It's 21st of September. And if you're on the other side of the world, anywhere else in the world, it's winter's coming. So prepare your body now with your foods, so this is like the transitional time where you need to be aware. This is the most easy time to get sick, either if you're in autumn or fall or you're coming into spring. This is an easy time to get sick because the weather's changing, big changes happening. So this is a time to wear lots of layers in either of those things, so you don't get sick with colds and flus and stuff like that at this point in the year. So awesome. Thank you so much. I'll see you again on another stream soon. Thank you.